Aloha and welcome to this practice WOD, E46 Discover Meteor. So for this one, the first thing you have to do is buy the Discover Meteor book. I know it's $29. That kind of, as far as textbooks go, that's pretty cheap, right? I mean, many of the textbooks, $100 and so forth. And I'm not really requiring you to buy much for this class. Go ahead, throw down the 29 bucks, cost of a pizza, and it'll accelerate your learning of Meteor by so much. You'll learn that it's worth it. What's your time worth to you? So spend the 29 bucks, and what you'll do is you'll go through. You'll create a GitHub repo called Microscope, and then you'll create it. This is actually diverting a little bit from what's in the book, because what I want you to, at the end of the day, what I want you to have is a GitHub repo with the Microscope code in it. So if I go to GitHub and look at here, okay, so here's what you see is we have the master branch, and it's got the Meteor subdirectory. We've got a client, lib collection server, a git ignore, right? The git ignore is going to ignore the IntelliJ code, and what I'd like you to do for this is to go all the way up to Chapter 5 routing. Don't do the Chapter 5 routing because we'll do that next week. And also there's a section in there where they talk about deployment. You don't have to worry about that yet. Okay? So when you're done with the kind of the prelude part, this will take you, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes maybe. You'll have this app that looks like this. You click on one of these things and you'll go to the particular website, and it will be it'll be displayed this way. Okay? The practice WOD, what we're going to do is add a simple form to this application. So we're going to add this first little piece up here where we can actually type in the title and a URL, and it will get added to the bottom of this list here. Okay, so that's what we're going to do, and then we're going to use the polling code. You're going to base it on the polling code, and that was a previous experience that you worked on. So you want to bring that up in IntelliJ as well. So you can see in IntelliJ I've got polling and I've got Microscope both available to me right now. Okay? So let's go back to Chrome, and we'll start the timer. I don't see my timer. So I have to go into Applications, Time. Now I see my timer. And I'm going to create a branch called Add Entry 1. So I'll go into my Microscope and I'll click this one, Add Entry 1, create branch. Now I'm in that branch. And I'm going to look at the pollform.html and pollform.js code from the polling app. So if I go to IntelliJ, and then I look, this is Microscope. So I go to polling, and there's the pollform.html, which is this. Okay, so we have a template, and we basically have a bunch of input types of type text, and then a button at the end. And if we look at what I'm adding, I'm going to have two inputs of type text and a button. So it's very similar, very, very similar to what this template is going to look like. It's just going to be a couple of these instead of 5 of them. And then if I look at the JavaScript, here I've got the event handlers, and this is what I should do on a submission. And I'm going to prevent the default submission, the request response submission, and instead I'm going to, in this case, I'm going to create an object and do meteor.call, but in my case I'm going to actually insert the event into the items or the post collection directly. Okay, so that's my review. And then I want to look at the CSS for the Microscope item entries because I need to use the same nested div structure. Okay, so this is kind of fun. We get to kind of play with a few different things. So if I just click here and I say inspect element, what I'm going to find, this is the key thing I want you to see, is that to get this kind of white well structure with things inside, then I've got a class posts with a class post inside a class post content. So there's those three levels there to actually get me the entire kind of structure. And so my form is going to kind of mimic that, so I get the exact same CSS, and it's going to look exactly like what you see how the addition of this form looks just like these other item entries. All right, so I'm going to code up two files, postform.html and postform.js, to hold my form code. So let's go back to IntelliJ, and here we can't be in polling right now. We're going to be in microscope. So we're going to have post form. So I'm going to do propeller n, create a file, and this will be postform.html, and then a new file, postform.js. You see, I mean, in this case, he's using underscores to separate the elements of a file name, and we're just going to kind of continue with obey the kind of the style of the original for the most part. Okay, so what's going to go in these two things? In our post form, we want a template much like what's in the polling, right? So it's going to look very much like this. So I say, let's just take this, copy it, go to microscope, post form, and then we'll paste this in there, and then let's just call this post form instead. And then we're going to have one input field. If we go, let's go find, what does it look like? It's going to be title, URL, and a button. Okay, so this will say, and in fact, if we go back here and look at this more closely, we realize there's no label for these things. These are just the input fields, and then the placeholder inside is what's actually labeling what they do, which is kind of nice, very space efficient. So in fact, we can just get rid of that entirely, and we'll call this title, form control placeholder, and then we just say the placeholder is title. And then the second one, we'll get rid of the label, and the name of that will be URL, and the placeholder will be URL. Okay, and then we don't need any of these other two, so we get rid of them. And then we don't want this button to extend across the entire bottom. We just want it to be, regular. So, and then we'll say, what is this? It's supposed to say add entry or something? It's supposed to say add post. Okay, so add post. So that's our template. Now let's look at the JavaScript. Well, let's see what the postform.js has. This has an event handler for submitting the form. So let's make a copy of that. Then go back to microscope, paste it in, and the first thing we'll do is we'll make sure that we're talking about post form, right? And then we got the submit form, and we can see that we get the values of the form, okay, by saying event followed by .target followed by the name of the form element, okay. But we're not, of course, we're not dealing with polling here, and we don't have Meteor methods in this. What we have to do is look down in fixtures.js and see that, in fact, here's how we actually add an element to our collection. So let's make a copy of that. Go back to here, and then right following here, we'll say, okay, we're going to insert a post, and then for title, we're going to say event target title value, because that's what goes along with the way we're getting it here. And then instead of meteor.com, we're going to say event target URL dot value. Okay. And having done that, we can get rid of this stuff because that's not relevant to this particular application. Okay, there's our event handler. If we look at post form, we can see we've got a name title, a name URL, and that's what we're actually getting here. And so we've filled out our code. Looks kind of close. So update main.html to call our post form template. Okay, so remember that we renamed this to post form, and so if we go to main.html, we can basically just make a copy of this and then say post form so that our template gets called first. Okay? Oops, I just went to a different, there we go. All right. So, I think we're ready to go here. Let's see. So let's informally add our, let's look what happens. Okay, so now, geez, what did happen? Uncaught error, no template. So I brought up the inspector and I'm seeing this particular error. So let's post form. I misspelled post form. So let's save that out. Go back to Google Chrome and voila. Okay, so that's kind of good, but not really. I mean, we've got our stuff here, but it's not at all kind of formatted the way we want. And it's because basically I've completely forgot about those divs. So remember, we've got to say a div posts, div post, and div post content. So let's add that back into our template. So go back to here. So we've got to say div class equals posts, and we'll put that to the bottom. And then div class equals post, and we'll put the div to the bottom. And then we'll say div class equals post, what the heck was it? Post content. Yeah, you know, I had IntelliJ was trying to complete it for me. Did you see that? Oh, watch. Watch. Post, there it is, post content. Okay, and then bang. And then you notice that our indentation is all messed up, so we can do a propeller option L and it will correct our indentation for us. Okay, so that's very nice. All right, so now having done that, let's go back and take a look. Okay, better, right? Okay, now at least we got that white thing, but it's not an inline form. Okay, so if we go to Bootstrap and we look at forms, okay, how do we do an inline form? Well, we add form inline to our form. Okay, so let's go back to IntelliJ IDEA and we're going to say class equals form inline. Let's save that out and go back here and see how we're doing. Much better, much better. The post is too big and it's got this blue thing. We just had it be white. So to fix that, we'll say instead of large, we'll say it's small. Instead of primary, we'll say default. So let's see what we got there. All right, okay, that's looking really close. But we had this add post thing here. And as I recall from looking at these were H3s. So let's go back here and we got to say, what do we got to say? Add post colon. Okay. So inside here we're going to say H3 add post. Okay, let's see what that does. Okay, super close. Only difference is that this is blue and that is gray. So we can fix that, right? We're all, you know, kind of good hackers at this point. So let's look down in here, post content. Let's look at our H3. like look at this, and then we see, ah, there's our color. So I'm going to actually copy that color and go back here, and we'll kind of do this in somewhat of a lame way, but not really. Let's say color colon blah. Okay, so one thing we could do is we could go and edit the style, create a class for style, and then add that color in, and then add the class. Or, you could just add the style directly to the field. This isn't, the best thing for kind of long term, but this is a one-off spot, and I think it's good to kind of at least be able to understand that you can do this. So let's go back and look at things, and there, that looks looking super good. So I think formatting-wise, we're good to go. Now the question is, does this actually work? So let's get rid of that, and we'll say foo http cnn.com, add post, looks great. Looks like it's working perfectly. Okay, so let's go back here. It would be nice to have, and so we informally test our code. We can add items to the list, so that's working. But it would be nice to have the form clear after adding entry. You see how my foo.html, it's still there even though it's already been added. That is rather lame. So what we're going to do is have the form clear after adding an entry. To do this, have your form submit event handler take a second parameter called template, then call it at the end like this. So I'll copy this, go back to IntelliJ IDEA, and what I'm going to want to do is in here, I'm going to call template, but I'm going to add it as a second parameter, because this can actually take the template as a second parameter. So let's save this out and go back to Google Chrome. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say bar http cnn.com, add post, and voila, look at that. It clears it out afterwards and adds it to the list. Okay, commit your branch to GitHub, and we're done. So I'm going to go to GitHub. I'm going to say finished pwad, commit and sync. Great. So we'll call that a 15-minute. It's 14 minutes 23 seconds, but we'll call that a 15-minute WAD. And it was a nice combination, I think, of a little bit of Meteor, a little bit of form handling, a little bit of Bootstrap, a little bit of Chrome developer tools, and a little bit of GitHub. That is a tasty, kind of stir fry of software engineering techniques.